Richard Grannon, narcissism extraordinaire, YouTube superstar, and a fantastic haircut. Richard, thank you very much for coming on the show.
You're very welcome. I just had my haircut for you now, half an hour ago. Didn't take cash. Walked off without paying. Criminal. Call the police.
So now you're wanted. Brilliant. So, does this mean that
you're an accomplice now?
I was about to say, yeah, great. So we've been talking now for about 30 seconds, and I'm already in trouble with the law. I'm now an international criminal. But other than international criminals, you're also an author as well, and I have a copy of your book here, A Cult of One, which I initially read it when I first met you in Liverpool, and in preparation for this, I started going over it again last night, and it was quite nice actually, obviously, because when I first got into your kind of content, I only knew so much, and then through life experience and exploring different things, the book actually made a lot more contextual sense to me too, in relation to your stance on narcissism, your stance on relationships, and as well a lot of very vulnerable parts in there too about yourself, your own struggles, stuff to do with your childhood. So there were some parts. In fact, I want to ask you about the title, because it's something I've always wondered about. What is A Cult of One?
It was my attempt to describe what being inside of an emotionally abusive relationship felt like, which was felt very much like I was inside of a cult. But usually cults are groups of people. They're not just one leader and one follower. But the emotionally abusive relationships I'd experienced felt like a one leader, one follower scenario.
Right, okay. So when you say that, is it a sense of, because naturally the demographic in a cult is, there is, like you say, one leader, one follower. Did you find that kind of internal battle with yourself when you was in those sort of abusive relationships?
The internal battle, which internal? I was in a few internal battles. Which one are you thinking of?
Because just going from my own experience when I've been in quite a volatile relationship, is that you both want to leave, and you are arguing with yourself as to reasons why you should leave, but you're also conditioned to stay and you want to stay. So it is that push-pull dynamic which happens a lot of the time inside your own head. Is that something what you experienced in relation to this, like you say, the cult of one?
Yeah, definitely. So I usually refer to this as being the cognitive dissonance element of the relationship. The thing that causes people so much stress is there's your authentic self, and then there's your cult self, which you create to survive the relationship or the cult. And this is a simplified version of what's going on, but that authentic self and that cult self are perpetually in a battle for dominance. So if you stay, it's because the cult self is winning. And if you leave, it's because the authentic self has won out. It's quite painful. It's quite a painful thing to do.
Yeah, of course. And when I was in the cops and I would be investigating cases of coercive control, we often found that I've had people blatantly turn around to me and say, he's going to kill me. I know I'm going to die, but I won't leave. And there's a lot of and sometimes people go, oh, you just need to leave, you just need to get out of there. And even if you take away the whole thing of family dynamics and finances and all the kind of other stuff, the internal battle which people are having, I think is quite misunderstood. People can make it quite simplistic. You described it as the codependency, as the cognitive dissonance, and that emotional turmoil which is happening inside someone's head makes it much more complex. You did raise there's a quote in the book actually, which when I read it, I thought that's really, really cool. And it was actually paired with another one. So you say, in your 30s, I was desperately trying to pull myself out of the cycle of alcohol, violence, drugs, promiscuity, and abusive relationships. You also say, being rigorously honest with ourselves and others is the only way to be. Could you expand on that for me, mate?
Sounds like a fun week away for me now that I'm heading towards 50. I wouldn't mind a bit. I wouldn't mind a bit of that for a week.
Yes, you know what? I'll dive back into it for a bit. We can get on it, and then we'll see how we do from there.
And then I'll write a book about how I got off it again. It was sorry. What was your question?
Basically, you mentioned that you've told about some things which you experienced: the promiscuity, the drugs, the alcohol, the fighting. And in order to get past that, you had to be quite brutally honest with yourself. Now,
yes.
just from like my own experience and what people have seen, from what I've seen with other people, brutal honesty, even when things are going bad, that kind of self accountability, a lot of people just can't ever get there. So, how did you go from this place of it's a lot of chaos to then being so honestly brutal with yourself that you managed to do the internal work and move away?
Well, it was two parts really. One part of it was I was, suicidally depressed and my life just wasn't working and I knew it couldn't continue. And the other part of it was around that time was when, as you would have read about in the book, I was speaking to a Sufi mystic in Kuala Lumpur who'd taken me on and he'd given me quite a big responsibility. And so I was like, well, if I don't want to think about jumping out of the window of this 17th floor apartment and I want to take on this responsibility, I'm going to have to fucking get a grip, because I was in free fall, really. At that time, I wasn't really involved with drugs and violence and alcohol. I'd already stopped, but the ongoing effects of it were still there. I was very dysregulated generally as a human being. I was pretty disordered and chaotic. And I just thought, well, what does it take? What does it take to do that? What's important about doing that? So when I was introduced to Islamic mysticism, the entry route to me was like based on first principles, and it was, effectively Islam means submission. It means submission to truth, and the truth that you're submitting to in Islam is that you are not God. God has created you, and there is one God, and He creates all things, and all things exist at His behest, which I saw as like a fairly scientific proposition, fairly scientific proposal. I know I didn't make myself, and all that is at the cause of something that I don't understand. And I submit to that and I accept it in humility. The word for an infidel is kafar, and kafar in Arabic originally comes etymologically from a root word meaning to hide. And so I was like, so everything that is non-faithful is that which hides truth. So you can almost think of God as being like light, sunlight. And it literally means to bury it in the earth. So everything that I suppress or bury in the earth of my shadow or my unconscious from the Jungian point of view makes me unfaithful. And if I want to be faithful and true, then I need to tell the truth, and I need to tell the whole truth and nothing else. And I was like, well, where's the problem in my life? I said, well, it's localized here. It's me. So I was like, okay, let's turn that light on you then. And what are you doing? What do you want? What are you up to? And that led me to that sort of rigorous self-exploration of who am I? What's my intention? How do other people receive me? How do other people perceive me? And what can I do to change that? And that's where that came from.
I imagine that wasn't an easy task either, because, well, from you saying the book, you were in your 30s by the time you started doing that. By the time you're 30s, you've developed all kinds of coping mechanisms. You've developed all kinds of, habits, not necessarily all the best habits too. So for somebody of that age to have a brutal look at the self, I mean, absolute fair play to you, mate. By the sounds of it, you weren't in the best place, and I'm happy to see that you're in a much better place now. So I think more people, in particular, I think a lot of men need to do that introspection, and we'll get on to society viewing men as well. But just you mentioned about young there, and about religion and about spirituality, in particular that you are not God and you are a product of God. Do you think one of the reasons why we see so much despair in people's lives now, or even quite narcissistic traits in people, or even potentially the rise of narcissism, is that because we've rejected God? I think it was Nietzsche who said God is dead and we have killed him. What do you think about that? Do you think the breakdown in religious values in society has contributed to the downfall of people?
Yeah,
sounds very bleak, I know, but
no. It's good. It's good, and this is where we should go. this is where we should go to. So just to clarify, I don't believe in a personalized God who's a man who's judging me from a cloud.
This video was sponsored by my best-selling police memoir, The Job's Fuck Secret Diary of a Police Officer. After 10 years in the police service, I finally left and I decided I need to speak out. This book does a deep dive into police corruption, the real reason why the police force is falling apart, and things you will never hear in the mainstream media. You can check it out in the link in the description of this video. You could also grab some merchandise and support me on Patreon. And now, without further ado, enjoy the video.
That our religion and our understanding of religion is a fucking mess. It's very, very interfered with. The real history of Christianity is something that's fascinated me for a long time because of the drift. And I actually wrote a book in 2009 on the real roots of Christianity and what Christ was actually about and what he taught. And he would be appalled by what came after him, like disgusted. Like he would have torn it down. If he had the power to, he would have torn it down. Because it was, we have done things that he explicitly said not to do. And so in the original, like ancient people were not stupid. Medieval people weren't stupid. Ancient Sumerians were not stupid. The people of 380 CE Greece and the Mediterranean were not stupid. They were very advanced. And their philosophical worldview was extremely advanced, and I would argue more advanced than ours. So as our technology has progressed, our understanding of the world and our understanding of spirituality has regressed, almost in direct proportion to technological advancement. So they didn't believe in a sky daddy. They were talking poetically. I won't go off too much on this, but just one example. When I used to read on acid the story of Adam and Eve when I was like 16.
I bet that was eventful, weren't it?
That was crazy. I'd drop a double dip straubed and then be like, right, I'm going to figure out this whole God thing. And I didn't. I just sat there seeing colors and rocking and talking to myself. I'd write notes and I'd be like, oh, I've got the formula for reality. And I'd read it the next day and it was just a picture of the Joker smiling, going, ha, 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 ha.
Wow.
I was like, that's not what I thought I said yesterday.
That's a bit concerning, but anyway.
Yeah. So I was there going, oh, I think in this story, when it says, and God said, the ancient Jews were saying, and reality was so. And then I couldn't prove that. I just thought that's what it was. But more recently, I've come across literature that says, no, absolutely. It wasn't, the ancient Jews weren't going, there was a garden with a fucking man and a fucking woman who turned naked. It's absolutely metaphor. It's absolutely psychedelic poetry. And when it says, and God said, and God saw, it's, and reality was. Even the Jewish name, Yahweh, means that which becomes, that which brings things into existence. So just so that people don't hear us talk about God and then get switched off because they think they're talking about that version, I'm talking about the medium through which reality unfolds. When I say God, I mean reality itself. The medium through which all is God. It's not male, it's not female, it's certainly not fucking human. God doesn't have a nose, he doesn't have hands. That's pure narcissism on the part of human beings. Absolute idolatry and narcissism and nonsense. So that's an important point to clarify. The lack of God in any sense, whether you believe in a daddy God or a mummy God or a God with 6 arms and an elephant's trunk, is a problem, is a massive problem, because Nietzsche was writing based on what he'd read from Dostoevsky, the brothers Karamazov. So Nietzsche wrote that in Beyond Good and Evil in 1885, I think. And Dostoevsky wrote the brothers Karamazov from 1882 across 4 years. It was like released in a serial format in a newspaper. And I think that's Nietzsche's summation of one of the messages of the brothers Karamazov, which is, the idea of God is stupid and churches are dumb. And some of the monks that the Russian people would go and pray with or even pray to were absolute charlatans and frauds. And yet, if we don't have this, we're going to lose something really, really big. So they're both writing. The Industrial Revolution is picking up pace. They're seeing technology is growing around them. They can see the end result. So yeah, absolutely. I think narcissism a counterbalancing force to the God-shaped hole in our lives.
I think it's really interesting when, and that was beautiful, by the way. I could have listened to you talk about that all day. I think it's
Well, I
interesting.
stopped myself so that you didn't have to, because
Funny
I
you
have
should say
mercy.
that, because I can keep going. It's interesting, is it, when we look at society now and you compare it to society back God knows how many years ago. We are now more disconnected. We are now more depressed. We are now, I mean, technology is great. I'm able to speak to you and, show this to the world via technology. It's amazing. It changes ideas. But in relation to everyday human connection, we've lost so much of, I think, what it means to be human. And instead, we chase so many arbitrary goals, such as status, money, uh, short-term dopamine hits, such as that you've seen an attractive girl over there, so you wanna have sex with her, or you want to take drugs. And I think when people return back to such a simpler life, which is community, which is everybody has a purpose. And if one person doesn't wake up one day, then the entire community feel it because that person was important. Everyone feels valued. I think we could argue that we've lost that sense of community and we've lost our sense of God and a higher purpose and a cultural belonging. And as a result of that, people become more selfish, more idealistic. And in order to make themselves feel better, they then pursue these arbitrary goals, like I mentioned before. That then gives them status in this kind of toxic environment. So it's not a case of you are valued because you are part of the community. It's you are separate from the community and you are valued because of the assets and the resources that you can garner. And yet everybody's trying to do this and everybody's much more fucking miserable than they ever have been. I had a discussion with friends the other day, because I've got friends who are, very, very anti-God, very anti-religious. And I'm religious in the sense of I describe myself as Buddhist, but there's kind of a blend there. I don't necessarily believe in the Judeo-Christian God, like you said, the person in the sky who's looking down on you and telling you what to do. But I believe in I think the kind of spirit you're talking about, in the sense of it's like it's collective consciousness. It's not a physical being in the sense of it's not created in our image or we're not created in their image. I think that's a product of man. I think if you can have a faith or a belief in something higher than yourself, which gives meaning to your life, I think that would replace a lot of the junk meaning, such as likes on Instagram followers, arbitrary vanity numbers, and therefore you would live a much more fulfilled life. Where do you think, a bit of a big question, do you think that religion on the whole is a net positive or negative for society? Because this is another argument I had. I was saying that religion is a net positive, or if done in the right way, because of course there's a whole thing of radicalization, there's terror, there's carnage, but it also brings a lot of purpose and meaning to people's lives, as opposed to complete godlessness.
Religion, as we've known it from, if you include all religions everywhere at all times in human civilization, I think would be net positive, net negative, 50-50 split balance on their tip of a pen. Because as much good as, look, it's not, when people are anti-religious, these are my people. Like anti-religious people who are angry. I had my first clients in Malaysia were all ex-Muslims. They were furious with Islam. They were furious with Muslims. They hated them. And I was like, this is good. I like this. I can battle with this. This is great. It's my favorite kind of conversation, because these people usually are like wounded children they feel like they've been abandoned by a parent and they hate the parent. But beneath the message of I hate the parent is I really want my mummy and daddy back. I really need them. And that's the stronger emotional loaded message that I get from hardcore atheists. Like, I'm really lonely and I want it back. But how can I have it back without it raping me, torturing me, killing gays, chopping up children's genitals, which we still do to this day, and it's still considered totally
Yeah,
normal. Like most men in America are circumcised. There is no medical benefit to it whatsoever.
There's a channel called the Tin Man. I don't know if you follow him. He called the Tin Man on Instagram. He talks he talks about men's issues in general, but he makes a disparity between why is female genital mutilation a horrific crime and campaign against, but male genital mutilation is considered acceptable and normal. Neither has any benefit to the person having it done.
No, it's insane. I used to have this argument with Muslims in Malaysia. There was a Malaysian girl who wanted me to officially convert, which is called revert in Malaysia. And you get a government issued document because it's incredibly racist, Malaysia. The Malaysian Muslims are the Bumi Putra, which means they're the only real humans there. They're the real humans. And then they accept that there's an Indian population and a Chinese population, and they're very important to the finances, but they're not people in the fullest sense. And she said to me, I want you to get it done. And I was like, well, no, I'm not going to recite the Shahada. I'm not getting circumcised. There's no need for it. She said, it's more hygienic. I said, in what sense is it more hygienic? She said, because if you don't wash it, it gets dirty. I said, yes, and so do your fucking armpits. Do we take a flamethrower to them? Should we just singe your armpits so they seal and never sweat again? It's moronic. God is perfect. There is a concept called fitra, which means like the natural way in Islam. It's fitra. That's how you're designed. So it's perfect as it is. If we can't universally agree that sharp razor blades don't belong near the genitals of children of either sex, I can't have a conversation. That's not civilized thinking. Women, little girls shouldn't have their clitoral hoods or sometimes their entire clitoris removed. And little boys shouldn't have their foreskins chopped off. It's just insane. We have to stop. No, there's no need for that whatsoever. And it's very strange the way, yes, FGM, female genital mutilation, is a crime against humanity. Meanwhile, I think it's 80% of Americans. They even have the term cut and uncut. So I'll get with an American girl and she'll be like, oh my God, you're uncut. I'm like, it's so weird that for you, mutilated bellends are the norm.
This is very odd most talk over a cocktail, isn't it? Like, most people just ask me what, is it a cut or uncut cocktail? Stop it. Fucking hell. So that actually segues quite nicely. Talk about severed bellends. It segues quite nicely into the next thing I wanted to pick your brains on, Richard, which is the role of men in society and the prevailing narrative now, obviously depending where you look, is we want men to be weak because men are dangerous. Men attack women. Men do X, Y, and Z. It's like the whole man versus bear argument. Do you remember that?
Yes, of course.
Would you rather be trying to? Anyone who says the bear is clearly never been one-to-one with a very hungry bear. So that's absolutely ridiculous. But there's this whole thing in society that, like, some gyms now are segregating men and women. So men can only go in certain parts. Women have
Alhamdulillah. Good.
What does that mean? I don't know that. What does that mean?
It means God be praised. Good. Separate them.
God be praised. Separate them all.
Cover everyone up. We should all be in fucking covered. We should all be covered head to toe.
Well, maybe.
Do you see how, though? Do you see how, joking aside, we don't like religion, and in the West we don't like Islam, but now we want to segregate men and women? I mean, in Muslim countries, segregating men and women in gyms is normal, totally normal.
Well, you're probably more educated on this than I am, but when it comes to Islam and the burqa, the full hijab and the head covering, it's to stop men viewing women so that they can't control their urges and then they see them as a sexual being. Am I along the right lines there?
You are, but men are also supposed to be covered. It's not like we can walk around with our tops off and women have to be, and I've seen that in Islamic waterslide parks and on Islamic beaches. So the husband is in a pair of shorts like I am, and the wife is like in a burkini. They call it a burkini. And sometimes trying to go down a water slide in these burkinis is pretty hard. But then the kids are not. So you're not a woman until a certain age, and that it's really confused. The idea is modesty, humility, and an understanding. I know it's gotten fucked up. I'm not going to sit here and defend it. I know the abuse. There's abuse everywhere. You asked before if religion is net positive or net negative. It doesn't matter. We're religion requiring creatures. We need it like oxygen. We need it like water. Have we fucked it up? Yes. Did we get it right sometimes? Yes. We just have to try. We just have to try and integrate spirituality into our lives. But no, the idea is humility and a respect for the power that sexual energy has and sexual tension provokes. In the Middle East, where this was coming out of, Jews and Christians were doing the same thing. You know, Jesus's mother would have been covered, her head, everything, only the face, up to the wrists. And so were Christian men in medieval Europe. Men covered their bodies. They covered, you wouldn't walk around with your knees, your sexy, especially you, Jay, I've seen your knees, with your sexy, fucking pale
you told
knees
them that we
out.
wouldn't. I told you that you wouldn't. You said you wouldn't raise our WhatsApp conversations while we were talking on
just slip your OnlyFans link in there so they can all see your knees.
It's in there already. Don't worry about it.
It's already in there. It's a way for understanding the potential chaos that sexual desire can create. So we are all warriors, and we're all working with our bodies as farmers, or I don't know, blacksmiths all day. And then you look at my bird and I don't like it. Or I look at your woman and you don't like it, or somebody has sex outside of marriage, you then have intra-tribal violence, which is fucking catastrophic. So then the people at the time are like, how do we can't, our best men are slaughtering. The highest testosterone men are going to be the most territorial and defensive. How do we defend against this? So they were like, well, cover everybody up and have pretty strict rules about mixing so that we don't have our best men hacking each other to death. And that's not an Islamic problem. French Knights, there was a film done with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck just a couple of years ago, and it died a death, but it's actually a really good film about French Knights who got into this duel scenario with each other over a woman. It's set in the 1400s. It's a true story. It's a real story. I don't know why it died a death. It was a good movie. I recommend it to people. I can't remember its name right now. But yeah, the idea was try to have respect for your body and the bodies of other people, and respect the power of lust, respect the power of sex, and the fact that it makes people. So it's a pretty high risk endeavor. What we have now is the absolute opposite of that, which is, fuck as much as you can, enjoy as much sexual pleasure as you can before you die. You've only got so long on the planet. Nothing means anything anyway. You've got 75 years here. Try and squirt out as many as you can whilst you're here. Which is a really depressing and anxiety inducing, and non-sacred, sacrilegious point of view to have. Sorry, I went off there. I'm not sure what your question was.
I told you, you fucking go off, mate. Don't worry about it. If you enjoy these kind of conversations, so why not become a Patreon? You can support me for as little as $4.99 a month. As a Patreon, you'll get advanced access to videos, articles, behind the scenes footage, and more. For just the price of a coffee a month, you can help me bring these important conversations to the world. Just simply click the link in the description or scan this QR code right here. It all relates back to godlessness, doesn't it? And hedonism. And you only have one life, so therefore, like you said, just pursue pleasure until the end of time. And you said in your 30s you went through like a period of promiscuity. Now, I'm a little bit younger than you, but when I was mid-20s, I'd say certainly from about 18 to being about 26, 27, if I wasn't in a relationship, and sometimes if I was, I was exactly the same, promiscuous, hedonism, and I didn't feel great for it. Yes, okay, on paper, I'm getting this girl, then I'm getting this girl, then and so on. I didn't feel good. It was like you proper cheapen yourself, you wear yourself down in the pursuit of this pleasure. You feel fucking disgusting. Now I'm in a secure, long-lasting, monogamous, happy relationship. Never been happier. So on paper, if we was to write down what this primitive brain wants, it's no, you want to sleep with that person, you want to go out and drink, and you want to do everything else to consume as much pleasure as possible. But in practicality, that's a surefire way to make yourself feel absolutely miserable. So men, just going back to what you were saying before, men have this they're being told by the Andrew Tates of the world, go out and have multiple wives and go to the club and make your money and everything else. But then the flip side of that is that he claims he's religious, but everything he professes is quite anti the faith which he purports. You're rolling your eyes.
Oh yeah, he's Muslim.
Yeah, Muslim. Definitely not just a way of
Andrew,
attracting the demographic.
if this video ever comes across you, would you like to discuss Islamic philosophy with me, Andrew? Would you like to just do it, off the cuff, 48 hours, no time to rehearse, me and you, mate? We'll discuss Islamic philosophy. I don't think he even knows. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
Well, yeah, but I mean, one might say it's a marketing ploy. But
yeah, some cynical people said it was a marketing ploy. Some cynical people said it was a deal that got him certain privileges in certain countries. We'll see. Time will reveal. Time will reveal everything.
We'll see where that fucking go.
I mean,
I've lost my shade of thought now.
It's not like he converted and then changed his message. He's still talking. I just watched. He's very funny. Since he went to prison, he's become way funnier, like hilarious. And I watched a video of him yesterday talking about he dumped a load into a girl. He literally said, "I dumped my load into a girl who said Pacific when she meant specific." And she was retarded. And he said, I probably have like a half retarded son out there somewhere. And Tristan's on the other side of the room just staring at him like that. It's funny. It's very, very funny. But it's not like he converted and then changed the message. He stayed exactly the same. So you'll all have to forgive me if I don't really believe that he's truly sincere.
I remember him saying when he had an interview with Bonnie Blue, because I watched that one, and he said, if any man has sex with a woman to not get her pregnant, then you are gay. And any man who goes down on a woman is also gay.
Then I'm gay. Then I'm gay.
I'm gay as fuck. So gay. Someone's going to clip that.
Yeah.
Someone's going to clip
that. Just us saying that.
Yeah.
We are so gay. So gay.
With some nice fucking music on it. Someone will sit some Lionel Richie on that or whatever. But yeah, so you've got that side of the fence saying that, men go out and do this and do that. But then you've got the other side of the fence saying, if you go to the gym, you're toxic. We will separate men and women from working together because men are predators and can't control themselves. If a man wants to look after his family and wants to earn money to provide for his family, he's a misogynist and it's a patriarchy. Where the fuck do people go? Like, I've got a young son. I want him to learn that, it's okay to find women attractive and to want to procreate, but just make sure you do it together pregnant, or some influencers online will call you gay. And then it's okay to want to do that. And like pornography now, it's when I was younger, you may have a friend who had like a 30-second clip on the phone, and it wasn't extreme. It wasn't a girl taking 12 dicks at the same time. It was, it looked fairly fucking vanilla compared to what it is now. But yet, young men are walking around with a very powerful computer in their pocket. At any point, can they look at the most extreme, depraved types of pornography going? I remember watching a video with you. I think you was doing a podcast or something, and you got onto the topic of pornography. And you said something like, I would allow pornography to go, but it would just be my face in the middle of it going, this is damaging your brain. This is damaging your brain. You say something like that. But where the fuck do men go, man? Like, what do we do?
And then everybody in a Pavlovian way develops a kink for like a middle-aged man telling them off.
For your face.
Middle-aged white man being like, this is bad for you. And they're like, oh yeah, tell me again.
Yes.
Tell me again, Daddy. Tell me.
You're drooling.
Bad.
Why are you drooling? Who's ringing that bell?
I think like it's a tricky one. So I believe very much in people being allowed to make their own mistakes. I think you should act in a way that is natural to where your body and your hormones are up to, within the bounds of responsibility. And if we're talking about pleasure, and we're talking to men, one of the things I would say to men is, if you actually think about your best, most pleasurable sexual experiences from what happened before to what happens after and the day after, you'll probably be able to track that your best experiences were actually inside of fairly loving relationships. Now, you might have had very intense sexual relationships, a very intense sexual experience that was pretty dark before and chaotic and awkward, and dark and chaotic and awkward afterwards, but the sex was great. How much sex do you think you're going to have in your life? Like, if you go on holiday with your girlfriend and there's nothing else to do and you see her in a bikini, let's say you go up to 3 times a day or 4 times a day because you're both, I don't know, the sun's activated you. You probably do that for 4 or 5 days. You're not going to do it for 7 because you get sore and then you can get infections and because you just get worn out. So realistically, you're talking about spending less than 0.5% of your life with a partner having sex. Let's not get deceived, gentlemen. Let's not let the devil deceive us that there's any there. You're better off in a loving relationship with somebody you get on with and you can have good sex with that is enjoyable for you both, where afterwards you're not thinking, how do I get her out of my house? Or if you're gay, thinking, how do I get him out of my house? Or why are you still here, love? Why have you not called yourself an Uber? Get yourself home. Wipe that bit of kebab meat off you and go home. You know, it's depressing, it's sad, and it's lonely to use other people as masturbation toys and to allow ourselves to be used as masturbation toys. It doesn't treat the body as sacred. And I'm not like a Christian conservative. I'm not wagging my finger at anybody. I'd say, like, experience whatever you want to experience. The response of my religious dogma would be, do whatever you want. But where there is power, there is responsibility. You have the power to have sex with people. Good for you. The responsibility for doing that lies with you and only with you. It's yours. Where there is power, there is responsibility. The idea that you can have rights without responsibility, that you can have power without responsibility, and you can enjoy eating the food without paying the bill is just pure modern ideological consumerist nonsense. And it's driving people crazy. And it's driving entitlement through the roof. And then everybody goes, oh, narcissism is spiking. And you've got me in the corner going bald and like pulling bits of my hair out. That's not narcissism, but it's adjacent to narcissism. It's massive amounts of entitlement and extremely exploitative behavior. And we're training young people to exploit each other. We're saying, no, we're doing this in the name of freedom. What freedom? What freedom? The freedom to be a slut? The freedom to be a wank sock? Either for a man or a woman. I don't want to be a woman's wank toy. I don't want to be a fucking dildo. She doesn't want to be a wank sock. We must embrace that we're here for more than this, and that your life has more meaning than this. Your body is sacred. Your time, your attention, your intelligence, God-given. It's sacred. Don't throw it away on bullshit. You're special. You're meaningful. You're an amazing construction that really, by all the laws of science that we understand, none of this should work. None of this should exist. It is a second by second miracle that it doesn't just all disappear in an entropic immediate process into slop and sludge. And yet here we still are. And again, the next moment and the next moment, against towering probabilities that it would not be so, yet we persist. And that I see as proof of will. And that I choose to call God's will. But if people don't want that, then fine, call it something else. Universal intelligence. Call it what you like, but don't waste it. Don't waste it. And don't deny it, because it's obviously the case. We are intelligent. There is intelligence. Let's do something decent with it rather than treating each other like sock puppets.
Socks.
Wank
Mate,
socks.
That was I fucking love that. I'm going to start a Richard Grannon motivational page. And I'm just gonna, I mean, you'll have the I'm gay part of it in the middle, of course. But no, I loved what you said then. And in a world where people seem to not have much meaning, I think there's so many people out there, both men and women, that just need to hear those words. You are special. You are amazing. The very fact that you are here. I mean, you said it's like the miracle and the odds of this even existing, for one. I believe I heard a scientist say it's like winning the lottery every single second that this continues. And
it's something Dawkins has said, and it's way, way, way more improbable than winning the lottery. But he says it to make it understandable. Sorry, I interrupted you there. I just wanted to put in that it's fucking mind-numbingly improbable.
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry, mate.
But it's also like, just even if you take that out, you don't take that into account, the very fact you are here. Think for the entirety of your entire ancestral lineage, if there always had to be those two things met, then they created that, and then they created that. None of them died. The right ones didn't die. Going back hundreds of thousands of years, if not longer, all the different diseases, the animals, the prey, fucking all of that. And you get to this point now, and then you dye your hair blue and say you're non-binary. It's like, fucking hell. But, if we've not been cancelled so far, Richard, we're certainly going to fucking get there.
The way I respond to that when I see it at an instinctive level is, I wonder if, as a species, because there is evidence of this, in other species of animals, where if the collective unconscious realizes there's too many of us, we start touching the suicide button. It's very strange to me, that just at the moment where blue-haired non-binary explodes, male testosterone at the same time is dropping to levels it's never been lower. I think
isn't it like a 30-year-old man now is like the testosterone of like a 50-year-old man or a 60-year-old man?
Worse, it's 70. So if you go back to the 1920s, because we don't have records going further back than that, it's something like a 30-year-old man of today would have the testosterone level of a man in his 70s in 1920. So, and then they say, oh, it's the microplastics. Your body registers that as estrogen. It takes it as like a programming code that says downregulate. So, okay. But isn't it funny? Right when we're at the peak of human population, these strange suicidal, and I mean in the species sense, something that would end the species, like people like me, who say, "Oh, I'm not going to have children." That's a non-procreation protocol. The blue-haired non-binary people, the people who are screeching about all forms of heterosexual union are a form of rape, which is, I'm sorry for using so many bad words. You're gonna have to.
No, it's fine. I've not fucking heard that one. What's the heterosexual union's rape? What's that one?
It's a radical feminism. I can't remember the author of that notion, but there is a group of radical feminists who think that absolutely all forms of sex between a man and a woman are essentially rape.
Is that because the man is supposed to have the power in the relationship or something?
That's what they'll say. They'll say something like that, like because all men benefit from a culture that's built on sexual violence. Therefore, all men are guilty equally of sexual violence. Therefore, all sex with a man is effectively rape. Something like that. I can't remember. I mean,
that's
the thinking on it.
Serious mental gymnastics they're going through there. That's using a collective thing of, well, one culture's done it and they have this in common, so therefore everything what has that in common is the problem with that.
Yes, and these are the same people who'll tell you they're not racist. So if I get beaten up by a poor Vietnamese guy in Malaysia, and I say I fucking hate all Vietnamese people now, or I hate all young Vietnamese men who ride around on mopeds, they'll be like racist. And then the next breath, because one man out of 100 men has done something awful, all men are guilty of that. It's a weird, but so much of that like radical left-wing ideological thinking lacks internal coherence. It's not internally consistent. And I'm speaking as a former radical leftist. I used to be down for all of this stuff. I used to think all of the problems of the world were down to powerful white men. And then I traveled. Then I went and saw the world and I was like, oh no, these people are doing it themselves. And it's actually quite patronizing to say, you saw my trigonometry interview, so you've heard this before. It's white supremacy via the back door. What they're saying is only us white people are evil and only us men are powerful and evil enough to do this to the world. We're just not that important. Corruption, exploitation, slavery, murder, genocide, all humans are capable. We're equally potent. In recent history, we kind of are on the scoreboard. Our numbers got higher, but just change your view of history. Change the lens where you're looking at. and you'll see a different story. So the way I look at that kind of thinking is it's trauma-based thinking. It's borderline personality disorder type thinking. It's splitting, it's fusing, there's reaction formation, and it's people who are in a lot of pain. They're in a lot of mental anguish, and they come to strange conclusions, and then they project that out as a political ideology into the world. And it's not a political ideology. It's an expression of traumatized thinking, warped traumatized thinking, pushed out into the world.
There's an issue with that, isn't there? Like, that's where I think a lot of, say, virtue signaling comes from, is that people see, okay, there's a collective narrative here that this person, this demographic over here are the bad ones. So we're now going to leech onto that because then that gives me more status, which then elevates my status in society. But you mentioned about trauma as well then, and you've done some work in rehabilitation, was it? You worked in a rehab or for a prison or something?
The closest I ever worked with the police, I used to want to be in the police, and I couldn't get in because I got caught driving without insurance. That was when I was trying to join Merseyside Police.
Mate, you know what, I'd rather have you next to me than some of the people I see coming through. And that's, I mean, I was going to say that's no disrespect to some of the people I see coming through, but it actually was quite disrespectful. So
no, I was right. I was right for the job. But I think it was a real mistake. And then I was also applying to the army, and I remember talking to the recruiting officer of the army, and he said, "Well, they not." Because the story was the girl I was with said she was paying my insurance and she was taking money off me for it. She's taking 30 quid a month off me for it. And then I got caught in the tunnel, the Liverpool tunnel speeding. And I said, I have to show, they let me off, but I've got to show up my insurance documents on Monday. Can you hand them over to me? And she was like, oh, no.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, she'd never done it.
How old were you then?
24.
And it was £30 a month insurance. Fucking hell, tell times have changed, can't you?
Mate, I think she just made a number up. I think she made the whole fucking thing up. No, the recruiting officer for the army couldn't believe it. He was like, because he really wanted me. He was like, this is exactly what we're looking for. But Merseyside Police, the recruitment section, were just like, no. It's absolute for us. And I've got police in the family, old Merseyside police. They couldn't believe it. They were like, no, that's not how it works. What do they call it? It's
a non-compliant check or something, or
something like that. It's like a non-compliance offence or something. A non-criminal. It's a non-criminal offence. And they said you don't block people from joining the police for something that's not actually criminal. But the police had changed the policy the year that I applied and said, no, we see it as dishonesty. And they had a problem with corruption in Merseyside Police, believe it or not.
That's fucking ironic. That's very ironic, mate. I mean, I never say the force I work for because I don't think it's particularly important because it's my own experience, but it echoes a lot of what I see and what I get told happening nationally. So I never really say, and plus, in the book, I reference certain people. Some people might be able to figure it out, and so I don't want to get sued.
Yeah.
Which, funny enough, hasn't happened yet. Someone said to me, "Oh, did you get a load of legal people to read through the book before you published it?" I'm like, "Yeah, maybe."
Suing people is very, very hard. In truth, we talk about it like, "Oh, he got sued, she got sued." I know from experience, it's fucking hard to sue someone. Very, very hard. Yeah.
Well, that's reassuring. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But the honesty and integrity thing, I mean, the organisation love to peddle that we are integral and we support people and we want to be whiter than white. And yet they bring in policies which, on the face of it, look very good, like, fighting against violence against women and girls. On the face of it, a brilliant thing, very, very good. But how they implement it is essentially through dishonesty, through bending morality, through quite unlawful practices to make somebody else look better. So, yeah, the honesty and integrity thing, it seems kind of one way, really. If it makes the force look better, yeah, all right, we'll bend it. But if it means we can kick somebody out or stop someone getting in, then we can say, well, we uphold honesty and integrity. We see that as a very serious thing. What we take very seriously if it benefits the force.
Yeah, I think I'm sure we'll get onto this. I think it's changed a lot as culture has changed, as all institutions have changed, and it's going through a kind of an inevitable institutional drift. And so I'm not surprised to hear that. I actually worked for oh fucking hell. Who are the people who deal with the criminals? Like, you don't want to send a criminal to jail.
CPS,
Yes,
probation.
Probation. I have said on interviews in the past it was the CPS. It wasn't. We worked with this. We worked with the CPS. I didn't work for the CPS. Nobody's pulled me up on that yet, because I've said it in multiple interviews and it's not true. It was probation services. I worked in Runcorn probation, and
That's a place, isn't it?
Oh, mate, I'd come out of university and I was like, oh, nobody gets a job in psychology. You'll never use your degree. Just accept it, blah, blah, blah. And within like 9 months of graduating, I was delivering CBT seminars to rooms full of men. I think it was all men who were criminals by virtue of the fact that they were drug users. And it was, you do this 10-week course with this fucking 21-year-old who's fresh out of university, and you sign in and sign out. And if you do it, we'll let you off. If you miss 1 hour or kick off when you're at the center, you go to prison. Your bed is made. The cell is ready for you. You're straight into fucking prison. And so these lads, a lot of them said, no, we'll do the course. And then they'd come and they'd listen to me talk, and then they'd go around the side of the building and toot rocks and fucking spike up and then come in like that for the second set. Madness, mate. It was madness. But yes, rehabilitation work. No, I didn't rehabilitate anybody. I just delivered trite cognitive behavioral therapeutic tropes to not all, but most were hardened drug users, and by virtue of the drug use, hardened criminals. And I'd be like, think about next time before you spike up, think about the consequences of your actions. And I was like, fucking hell, if they could do that, we wouldn't fucking be here then, would we?
Exactly. If I'm sure they've never been told that before. I'm sure they've never thought, maybe I don't want to inject this heroin into my eyeball because all my other veins have collapsed. Maybe I should probably stop. How prevalent do you think trauma is in relation to offending, in particular drug use and alcohol use?
Well, if I won the lottery, this would be the kind of research I would be funding. I want to know to a nicety, and to with good numbers. So we need large numbers, talking thousands of prisoners we would need to interview. Childhood trauma, CPTSD, BPD, sexual abuse, and when men are in prison for violent crimes, I want to know how much is alcohol, how much is drugs, and how much is bad relationships or stress over bad relationships. Because the most violent incidents I've seen usually correlate with a guy feeling like his masculinity has been taken away from him. When Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, I 1000% believe he did that because he felt cuckolded publicly and he couldn't do it to Jada Pinkett Smith. So Chris Rock, who is like him, he is a Black American multimillionaire celebrity. So he's a mirror of himself, and he slapped the mirror image of himself. He didn't do it to a white guy. He didn't do it to a woman. He didn't do it to a Korean actor. He did it to another black man. And I think I want to know more about that. I want to know how much child abuse, how much sexual abuse, how much drugs, how much violence, and how much bad relationship stress there is. Like a lot of gangsters have this. A lot of like hardened criminals, they got their names and all that, but they're fucking heartbroken. And a lot of them have been ripped off. Big swaggering man talking this and that. The lads who are giving it the big, even Andrew Tate, I just think somebody's had him off. Some girl has had him off and broken his heart, and he just wouldn't go to therapy.
And then it's that over posturalization, isn't it? To show, no, well, I am the man. And if anyone says otherwise, it's a very fragile ego, isn't it? Because if you dare question me, then I will use violence to assert that I'm a stronger man than you. I know personally. So I remember being in hospital once. I was guarding somebody. He'd been locked up, frequent drug user, and he'd been fighting in town, and we took him in. He said he banged his head, probably just didn't want to go to custody and wanted to try and pinch a ciggy off someone, which normally happens. So I was sat there in custody, and there was another lad in there who was a prolific burglar. He was actually in a wheelchair because he'd broken his leg jumping out of a building because he'd been disturbed when burgling somebody. And I got chatting to him, and I said, why have you not sorted your fucking life out? Like, what you doing? He's, oh, I'm an alcoholic. I'll probably get sacked for saying stuff like that now. I remember I had this argument on X with somebody saying some people respond better to being sworn at, and he's like, no, I would never respond to some. They were quite well to do, I think. No, I'd never respond to being sworn at. I said, well, yeah, but you're not my clientele. It depends who you're talking to. Some people respond better if you're speaking like that.
Context, you fucking divvy. Some people are really, really high IQ, but they have the social intelligence of a fucking shoe. Honestly.
Yeah. And not even a nice shoe either, like an old beaten up leather shoe, which your dogs have.
Shitty shoe that's been chewed up.
Shitty fucking shoe. And I mean, I used to get great. It depends who you're talking to, of course. If I walk to old lady Doris who's lost her car keys and I start calling her a see you next Tuesday, she's probably not going to respond quite well to that. But Billy Boy Burglar, I imagine if I walked over to him, okay, sir, let's see, he'd be like, piss off, mate. So you talk to people normally. Anyway, so I got chatting to this guy and I said, how long have you been an alcoholic for? And he said, about 12 years. I said, what happened 12 years ago? And he said, my wife died. And as soon as he came out of the army, his wife died. So he had the PTSD of the army, because I think he served overseas. And then he's had the significant trauma of this person who he cared for died suddenly. He then began the classic story. He then began drinking to cover up the pain. He then started offending once he became an alcoholic to form the habit. And in the middle, and this guy he would, frighten the fucking police horse. He was a rough lad. And he just instantly started crying his eyes out, absolutely crying his eyes out, because somebody had said to him, not what are you doing, but why are you doing it? And how did that start? And I'm a big believer in, I would say, a lot of people who find themselves in prison, in particular people who find themselves repeat offenders, whether that's sexual crimes, whether that's violent crime, whether that's drug or alcohol use, they are essentially, like you said, very traumatized, likely traumatized children who built this shell around them so they don't have to do the inner work. I remember speaking to a domestic violence advocate who we got onto the context of not just abusers, but also people who find themselves in repeated domestic violence relationships. She said they're both the same. They're both very hurt children inside, and they're trying to figure out a way of not addressing that. So what's your thoughts on that? Do you think just going on the rehab side, do you think society needs to move harsher, as in more punitive? Because I've heard some people saying if you carry a knife, it should be a 5-year minimum sentence straight away. Or do you think we need to look at supporting families more and supporting that inner work of the child more through therapy?
I'm very for harsh punishments for crime, but I prefer them to be short. I don't think locking people up for years is good. I think if I was running a dictatorship, which will come, which we can only hope will come after the military revolution. And I've said this in interviews, and I want to make it clear: I'm very lazy. I'm not doing anything myself. You have to take me at gunpoint and say you're the appointed dictator now, and just do your job. You have 7 years. And I'll go, oh, fuck, okay, I guess I'll be in charge. I don't want any of the responsibility of the violence that comes before it. I'm a very precious person. No, I'm against very lengthy sentences. I see that as torture, really. Cruel and unusual punishment in some respects for some personalities. For other personalities, I've got mates who went to prison. One of my mates who, every time he went to prison, he came out, he would lose like 5 stone. He'd get on gym duty, he'd be training twice a day. He'd get back into boxing. He couldn't access drugs very easily or alcohol in the gym. He couldn't get burgers and stuff. And I would just be like, you may as well just, and he was happy. He was happy. He was a man's man. He was surrounded by lads. He had a job. They all knew him. He'd get in great shape. And I was like,
he had,
and
he had purpose and community is what he had.
100% purpose and community. Other lads go to prison and have a fucking psychotic break. I mean, which I can see. I can see being terrified. And so that's not equal. I kind of feel it's a really tricky one. So yes, I want rehabilitation. I don't think it's the police's job to rehabilitate people. And I can't see how the prisons can rehabilitate people. I think we've got to go upstream. By the time somebody's in the street carrying a knife, me personally, speaking as a former doorman of 15 years, I faced a lot of street violence, beat the fuck out of them. There. You got a knife in your hand, you're getting batoned, you're getting sprayed, and you're getting locked up the hard way. And you're going to have a rough 24 hours. That's what I want, because you fucking put a knife in your hand. Do I want that same persecution? Do I want persecution for that person for the next 15 years? No, I probably in my dictatorship would be like, okay, you're going to do this much prison and then you're in the military and you're going to like, we don't have the technology to give you a family and to give you your childhood again. This is the closest thing we've got. It's called the infantry for a reason. So now the army is going to be your mummy and daddy. And I've spoken to military people and they resent the idea of sending trash to the military to be cleaned up. But some of those men, some will be the best soldiers they've ever had if they're caught young enough and if they're caught before they've messed their bodies up with alcohol and drugs. So it's a hard one, you know. So that to me is a downstream problem. If you have broken families, if you have weird cultural practices, look, you can't come to me and say, what do you want to do with this kid who's got a knife in his hand? And we have a TV show called Naked Attraction and a TV show called Love Island. And people might say the two things are not related. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but they fucking are. And under my dictatorship, or Married at First Sight, and under my dictatorship, you wouldn't be able to argue with me because you get locked up. You can't have moral degeneracy over here and then demand moral upright standards of behavior over there. And I'm not saying it's not that young man's responsibility or his fault. It is his responsibility. He does have choices. By the way, who's teaching him that? Should it be the government's job? Should it be the school's job? Because I used to work in schools as well. And the schools were trying to be like life coach, psychologist, police, probation officer. Teaching was in a state school in a rough area was the fucking last thing these poor fuckers had time to do. And they're on 28 grand a year, 32 grand a year. So it's, you really need to, in a society where everything works, in my dictatorship, there's no excuse for you running around with a knife. Is there an excuse for running around with a knife now? Well, your mum's got 3 baby daddies. You're one of 3 brothers. You're raised in a council estate. Your mum's a drug addict and she brasses herself off. You don't see your dad. And when you do see him, he nonces you. I'm not ready to cut that kid's hands off for carrying a knife. I'm not.
I know that some people will say that, well, I had a shit childhood and I turned out okay. It's all right. Okay. Fucking fair play. Well done. I've had a difficult time. I know from the things you've written about and things you've said, you had a tough time. You know what? And neither one of us have fucking been to prison. We're not walking around with a knife in our hands. But there is also, I would say, the silent majority of people who have shit upbringings have the cards stacked against them in order to live a happy, successful, fulfilling life. So I completely agree with you that I think by the time you are walking around with a machete and you're peddling drugs and you are running around, chances are your path's kind of planned out. We got to catch these incidents. We got to catch these things early. And it's that intergenerational trauma, isn't it? Granddad and grandmother were a nightmare. They pass it down to their children who then happen to be your parents. And then you will then, continue that cycle on. I think I did some research on it because I'm writing the next book called The System's Fucked. And in that, I've spoken to social workers, I've spoken to people who work in probation service. And not only do they have no staff and no resources, they're now expected to do the work of 5 different people. You just can't fucking do it. But not only that, looking at some of the statistics, I think it works out that 75% of young men who find themselves in prisons or in gangs come from fatherless homes. They have about 4 or 5 adverse childhood experiences. So I think if we want to stop addiction down the line and we want to be able to look after people and stop them doing the revolving fucking door in and out of prison, I completely agree with you. Prison is not a rehabilitation service. One, because yes, they can try the very best, they just don't have the resources or the staff to do it. So we have to be able to look at people when they're children and be able to support them that way. And I think when it comes to knife crime, just to use the example used before, telling somebody, well, they already know they're going to get in trouble if they carry a knife. They already know that the knife's more likely to be used on them. They already know that, they're going to go to jail or they get a suspended sentence or whatever. They don't care about the consequence, because not carrying a knife means that they can then be ostracized from their community, which they've now found, and the criminality, which gives them status, which is something they don't have. Like you said about the lad who went to jail. He found community and he found belonging. That's exactly what these young men find inside a gang. So making sentences harsher for people who carry weapons, I think looks good on paper. Practicality wise, are prisons really going to send a 17-year-old boy to a young offenders industry for 5 years? They're very, very unlikely to do that.
Would you be up for bringing back birching?
You'll have to tell me what birching is, mate.
Well, lashing people across the back with a piece of... Apparently, it was so painful the last time it was done, they would hang a bucket round your neck with sawdust in it because the pain would make people vomit. I'm not sure how I feel. I do want harsh punishments, but I think it should be like short. Like, if you do this, I want that animal brain to understand, if you do this, this is what you get. It's not cool. You're going to throw up because it's so fucking painful. And there has to be a harsh consequence from it. But like we were saying before, we can't have a culture that's promoting and permitting promiscuity and degeneracy. Of course, people are going to have low
celebrating
IQ,
it as well.
Yeah, celebrating it. Low IQ people are going to spunk out more babies. Are you fucking dumb, fam? Of course, that's what they're going to do. And those low IQ people who accidentally spunk out babies that they can't take care of, those babies are now on the streets. And yeah, they're in a gang because why not? Like you said before, you had a harsh childhood. I had a harsh childhood. I had a harsh childhood, but I wasn't raised in the ends in London where there's just the fucking tower block and a gang. And then they choose ops. They go into this weird consensual intra-tribal warfare just to give their lives meaning. Who do they kill? Lads who look exactly like them, who talk like them, who are them. They just kill a version of intra-tribal, not intra is the dominant form of violence. Okay, what's that telling us? That's saying, I hate myself. I hate my life. I hate this reality. Why do they hate it? Because it's hateful. They're raised in hell. I used to work in London, and you said about fatherlessness. It always makes me a bit emotional when I think about it. I would go in as a goofy-assed motivational speaker for 5 hours with the kids, like a working day. And you should have seen how problematic kids, especially boys, would cling on to me. Not, I don't think because of what I was saying, but just because there was a man who maybe understood a little bit, but wasn't like a pushover type of a man, maybe represented a little bit of order and a little bit of masculinity. And within 5 hours, it would be, they'd be like, "You coming back?" And I'm like, "No, I just wanted you to know what you were missing for 5 hours.
I'm going to leave you just like,
Yeah. And now I'm leaving. So I'll leave you and then see the emotional flashback you go into. We just want to exacerbate that as much as bye everyone, bye.
I'm just nipping out for milk. I'll be back later.
Exactly.
Never came back.
Yeah, they'll be like, yeah, we've heard that one before. And it
makes
really
sense that though.
It really shows it's not racial, it's not cultural, because these are London. This is London. The kids, they weren't white, but they would latch on to. Well, I was in my early 30s, just before 30 when I was doing that. So a late 20s northerner who knew a little bit more than them. I was still a fuck up, but I knew a little bit more than them. And just that little piece of leadership, just that tiny little fragment of leadership. That's why when I say put them in the military, I'm not like, oh, put them in the military and send them to be killed. I'm like, put them in a place where men are going to tell them to straighten the fuck up. When other men will be like, oi, dickhead, don't fucking do that. Because we've lost all that. Like you said, you can't swear at people. I don't know what it's like in the military now, but when I went for potential officer training, I went for the parachute regiment. They even swore at me when they were serving me food. They'd like give me food. Brilliant. And they would just be like, fucking take that.
Apparently now, mate, it's I mean, I've never done army service, but I know people that have, and they said now you can give your instructor a yellow or red card if they're being too rude. I'm sorry, but when fucking Russia or China invade, are they going to be, oh, this guy's got anxiety, bless him. Yeah, kill him first. You know, like how, and it's to be a man and to be a in my opinion, a functioning, decent man, you have to be strong. You have to look after yourself. You don't have to go to the gym and throw weights around, but you have to take care of yourself, and you have to be able to be the leader of your ship, the man of the household, where, you know, if shit goes wrong in my house, yes, me and my partner are equal, but fuck me, she comes to me and says, fix it, or my son comes to me and says, fix it. You have, and when you are raised in, and I'm not slating single parent families, I'm really not, because I was a single parent for a long time, but young men have to have, and just the data shows it, young men are more likely to go off the rails if they don't have a masculine figure in their life. And you going into these in city schools to people who they are there and they don't really have much of a shot in life, and part of that is because, you know, their upbringing and the lack of a male role model. You can see why it makes sense that they would gravitate towards you. I remember when I was in the job, there was a care home, and we went in there for whatever reason. I think someone had gone missing, so we went in there taking the missing persons report. And the bloke who was on, the carer, he had about 3 teeth. He had tattoos and scars everywhere. And we got chatting to him, and he said, I was a drug addict. I was a burglar for 20 years. I managed to finally sort my shit out, and now I work here. And the boys who come here don't fuck about when I'm on shift, because I'm able to come from a place of authority, and I have been there and done it. So when I see these young men going off the rails, I'm able to come from a place of experience and say, listen, you'll end up like this if you don't, if you carry on. So having that masculine energy there, as someone who is someone to look up to, I can definitely see why that is important. So just a segue on that then, because I could talk to you about trauma, criminality, and everything else all day, and we will get a bit more into that just a little bit later. But I really wanted to talk to you about more digging into the kind of domestic violence stuff, and in particular, female perpetrators of DA, because from my own experience, my eyes really opened quite a lot to, and this is how I first started watching your content, because I came out of an abusive relationship, got locked up by the police via a malicious allegation, after eventually I'd had enough. So, and I remember just Googling, I think on YouTube, going, what the fucking hell's just gone on? And then your beautiful face pops up. So I remember, and the more I kind of looked into it, the more I realised police don't get training on female perpetrators, certainly not in my force anyway. It was always the man is the abuser. It was always how controlling coercive behaviour, which is, in my opinion, narcissistic abuse is just another word for controlling coercive behaviour. It's more of a like a more popular sort of term. Female abusers. I know that borderline personality disorder, if I'm correct, is more diagnosed in women. Firstly, is BPD an abusive personality trait? Because some people say it is and some people say it isn't. And then if you just want to go into a bit of detail of how a female abusive partner, not necessarily whether a narcissist or not, but how that would manifest in a relationship?
There's a chap, his name is Xander Harris, and he's got something called the Empowering Men Initiative, and he's asked me to work as a patron for him. So I'm just gonna plug what they do now. I've not met him yet. It's called the Empowering Men Initiative, and I think they offer support and advice for men who are the targets for domestic abuse. Yes, EMI, the Empowering Men Initiative. If any men watching,
if you send me that, I'll stick it in the show notes.
Thank you. He'd appreciate it. They're a new organisation, and they're looking to get more awareness of what they're trying to do. So yes, I will send that to you afterwards. So yeah, I mean, it's obviously it can be a bit of a controversial topic. Obviously, we all know men are physically stronger than women, generally speaking, and so the greatest danger is from men to women, in the same way that when it comes to children, the greatest danger is from adults to children, not other children to children, though that is there. And it is one of these sort of blind spots that people have. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to talk about it, it seems, at a cultural level. But it does happen. You asked how it could play out in a BPD person.
Yeah, so it was a twofold question, but it was is BPD a abusive personality type? Because whenever I've said that, people who say they have BPD have then messaged me giving me lots of shit, and it's like the irony is not lost on you. So yeah, just with that one first. So BPD, how does it manifest, and how would it be classed as an abusive type trait, personality disorder?
So borderline personality disorder is absolutely an abusive and narcissistic and psychopathic personality disorder. If there's no entitlement to exploitation, abuse, rage attacks, narcissistic defenses, and moments of psychopathy there, it's not BPD. So I'm going to say something in defense of the ladies who've been attacking you, and then I'll say something that is in opposition to them. First of all, the overwhelming majority of BPD diagnoses given, upwards of 95%, are given as the opinion of a clinician. They're not handed out after any formal testing. That's useless. Second of all, it is without doubt the most overdiagnosed and misdiagnosed of all the personality disorders. So many of the women who believe they have BPD actually have PTSD or CPTSD, but the clinician is blind to that, or they're not trained for it. We know that this is the case because BPD, he said in inverted commas, is known to ameliorate in a woman's late 30s. Okay, good. That's not a personality disorder. That's a trauma response. And it's affected by hormones, it would seem. If not most, but many women who are diagnosed with BPD, it just it goes into spontaneous remission. It just disappears. Okay, so not a personality disorder. Definitely a problem. PTSD is a problem. CPTSD is a problem, but not a personality disorder. That's in their defense. To contradict them somewhat, some of them are far, far, far too attached, some of the women that you're dealing with online, to the label. And they want to be seen as BPD. And then they've taken the label and they go, I'm BPD. And then they want to abandon the clinical understanding of BPD. I'll always say there's 9 diagnostic criteria. What are they? And the women who allege to have BPD and be experts on it can't tell me one of them. Some of them are even surprised there's diagnostic criteria. I was like, well, what the fuck did you think it was? Like, what do you think it means? And they don't really have an answer to that. They have a sense or a feeling of what it means, but there are 9 diagnostic criteria. They're not perfect. You must match 5 of 9 of them. And it is also, it should be said, a disorder that many people, myself included, think should just be eradicated. If you take the gen pop of people who are diagnosed with BPD, you can probably chop out 50% who just don't have it. They're misdiagnosed. They have a different problem. And then in the remaining 50%, we can cut them in half and say, you've got CPTSD, PTSD, or vulnerable narcissism, fragile narcissism. There isn't really a borderline personality disorder in my humble opinion.
I think it's being recharacterized now, isn't it, as EUPD? Is that right? Emotionally unstable personality disorder.
Right, EUPD. I know that the professor who came up with the term complex post-traumatic stress, whose name evades me right now, begins with a G. She wanted it renamed emotional dysregulation response or something like that. But EUPD, yeah. I mean, if a PD is not permanent, pervasive, and personal, it's not really a PD in any meaningful sense. It's just a response, and it should be called a response. So then, just to add to that position, if you have somebody like Marsha Linehan, who was diagnosed with BPD, who then comes up with dialectical behavioral therapy, which is massively helpful, you'll see that what she's doing in dialectical behavioral therapy is helping people to process the symptoms of complex post-traumatic stress, and then the BPD disappears. So it's not BPD, it's a post-traumatic stress response. Okay, so that's fine. The other section of people that you're dealing with who do feel entitled to exploit, who are very nasty to their partners, we should not call them borderlines. What borderline means, the borders between neurosis and psychosis, it's a term from 1929. It's an ancient term. And it's usually overwhelmingly applied to women. So some critics have said, and I think they're right, it's the modern equivalent of saying this woman's hysterical. Give her some cocaine and a wank, which actually was... That's how people in Freud's generation dealt with hysterical women. Did you know that?
Getting a wank.
They would
imagine getting that prescription through.
They would literally wank them. I only found this out myself. I knew that vibrators came from psychiatry. So to give women orgasms would be seen as a way of dealing with hysteria. But I was like, obviously, these Viennese gentlemen wouldn't actually touch a woman's private parts. Oh, no. The vibrator came because the clinicians were sore from jerking their patients off, from wanking women off. They come home and they're, darling, did you have a good day at work? Oh, yes, but I had to wank 7 patients today. My elbow is killing me. So they built machines.
Three of them are squirters. They've ruined my suit. It's fucking
look at the state of me. What? I'm not paid enough for this nonsense. So it was actually... we think about those times as being very misogynistic and against women's desires and everything. But I would just put it to any female members of your audience. Do you want to do 6 weeks of difficult therapy, or would you like some liquid cocaine and a wank?
No wank. Mate, I think there's a lot of blokes who'd prefer that, to be fair. Talk about my childhood or beat one out. Well.
Yeah, and they had the old form of cocaine. You just drink it and feel good, get your dopamine hit, and get wanked off. So
fucking hell.
Probably it's probably not a useful clinical term. It's probably not a useful diagnosis anymore. But some people cling to it, and the way you can tell by their reasoning, the worst ones I found are on TikTok. So there's a BPD TikTok army.
Oh. TikTok's fucking ridiculous.
It's madness. And
funny enough, that's where I got all the abuse from.
Oh, was it TikTok? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do not fuck with the TikTok BPD army. So what they'll do is they'll use reasoning like, I've been diagnosed with BPD, so everything that sounds like me is BPD, and anything that doesn't sound like me isn't BPD. I've been diagnosed with BPD, and I'm obsessed with cosplaying as Star Wars characters. So therefore, everybody with BPD is that's literally the reasoning that you're dealing with. And if you say BPD can be very violent, BPD can be extraordinarily rageful, BPD can be very vindictive and exploitative, they'll go, well, I'm not. So whoever says that is wrong. And I'm just sat there going, have you picked up a book? Or just open Google or open ChatGPT and just fucking check. This is a clinical entity that has a set of diagnostic criteria that is set by psychiatrists. And then I say that to them, they go, I don't give a fuck about what's in a book. I don't give a shit about what psychiatry says. And I say, fine, you don't have to. Could you please stop using the term then? Like, if you don't want to know what it means, don't use the fucking term. Many people love to hear jargonistic language coming out of their own mouths. I want to say narcissistic personality disorder. It makes me sound clever. I want to say borderline personality disorder, but I don't want to know anything about it. So it's it's a real problem. But yes, absolutely, it's in the cluster B spectrum of personality disorders. So people go, no, you don't know. There's a different type of borderline. There's a quiet borderline. There's a peaceful borderline. There's a fucking Star Wars cosplay borderline. And I'm like, this is nonsense. This is just absolute
it's people
nonsense.
attributing their personality and their kind of value to having this arbitrary label, isn't it? And it's not just BPD as well, mate. It's people who I know that have depression. If you dare say you can help your depression, it's like, well, hang on, that's like you're taking part of me away.
Yes.
It's a strong identification with something which is maladaptive. And if it was as dysregulated, dysfunctional as we know it is, you would want to try and support your way out of that. I remember my ex-partner, she said, oh, I've been tested for BPD, but it was inconclusive and I never went back. I was like, okay, that's fine. And she's like, but I don't think I have it. Meanwhile, I would make a comment. She would go from 0 to 100, extremely volatile, argumentative, insulting, and then literally within 5 minutes, as if nothing happened. And it'd just be that, what the fucking hell has just gone on there?
Yes.
And that happened quite consistently. With just talking about domestic violence, we know about the stats and everything else when it comes to men, and it's the violence against women argument, which, like I said before, is obviously very important. But we don't talk about violence against men from women because it's, I don't know, it's seemed as not an important topic, whereas we know that male suicide, the biggest threat to men is actually themselves. Is there a correlation there between men who get in their maybe 40s, 50s and take their own lives and pair that to relationship breakdowns, withholding of children, malicious allegations, etc.? So I think something what needs to be brought up is if you're with a partner who is abusive, reactionary abuse can be a big thing, where to the point where a abusive female may push somebody and push somebody and push somebody to the point of them snapping or retaliating, be it, potentially physically, or they leave, and then they see that as either, they finally put their hands on me, I can now make an allegation against them, and I can get them done, and then they can project that they are the victims all along, or they've left me, I'm now going to make a malicious allegation against them because how dare they reject me? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Just from a professional standpoint, I think police and certainly prosecutors as well have to be made aware that men are also the victims of women, and the women may present like butter wouldn't melt and present like everything's fine, but behind that closed door, they're not seeing the true reflection of what that person is day to day. And I remember dealing with plenty of cases where there was one in particular. The man rang the police. He stood outside in the street. He's got his shirt ripped. He's got he's blooded. He's rang the police on 999. The police turn up. He says, my partner's in there. She's just attacked me. They go in. She's pretending to cry. You can very much tell it's crocodile tears. She's drunk. And then the bloke gets locked up because the police have said, because she's then made an allegation saying, well, he's abusing me, he's controlling partner. On interview, when I interviewed him, the guy said, every time I try to leave, she says, I'm going to bring the police on you or I'm going to get you done. And this is the final time where I've gone, no, I'm leaving. So do you think, just on that, Richard, not even talking about the attitudes of the police when it comes to potential sexism, do you think a female abuser will use the threat of using their thing as a female, that we know that men are the ones who get arrested the most and they're more likely to believe the woman over the man? Do you think that's used as a threat to keep control over their partners?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like people who have sort of this type of disorder where it's basically, to me, it's all a kind of moral degeneracy, and it's all in the range of psychopathy and narcissism, just different flavors. They're trying to win. They're trying to score points in a game, and they're trying to win the game, and they'll use anything. It doesn't matter what gender they are, what ethnicity they are, the culture. every gender, every ethnicity, every culture offers different weapons that can be leveraged. So they'll leverage anything. So if you're in a culture where it's going to be assumed that the man, well, is the perpetrator, then I'm laughing. I had a girl try to do this to me. Once. It was a bad relationship. She got very, very drunk one night, and she was trying to get me to hit her. And her way of getting me to hit her was by punching me. I was drunk as well, but I wasn't as drunk as her. And I've been boxing my whole life, so I was just like, no, we are not. No, stop it. She eventually got me against a wall, and she did clock me. And I was like, okay, you have to stop. Now, like I said, I've been doing nightclub security for years. I would always try to protect the client that I'm restraining so that I don't get in trouble with the police. So they can't bang off a wall, because that can look, well, it's any blood or any bruising, you can get done for. So I basically got her into a corner and pushed her down, just like to stop her from punching me. She grabbed me by my balls and by my hair, like a fistful of hair and a fistful of testicles. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to make a choice now. So I sacrificed the hair to get both my hands on her wrist. Obviously, I could have stopped her by just knocked her out. I was like, well, I can't do that. So I'm going to take both hands to her wrist, get her hands off my balls. And then she was pulling my head down. So I yanked it up, and she tore the hair out of the scalp, like a clump of hair with a piece of skin on it, which I kept. And then she went berserk. She went absolutely, she was naked. She was in a thong. This happened in Ibiza. And she went berserk, and she started screaming, you hit me, you hit me, you hit me. And I was like, no, I think you've just tried to hit me about 6 or 7 times. And I said it like that. No, I think you've just tried to hit me about 6 or 7 times. She went fucking nuts. She ran out into the street, and she was looking for the police, running around naked, screaming. And she'd gotten down the road to the roundabout, and the Guardia Civil picked her up, and she babbled her story to them. And they just drove her home and said, go to bed and go to sleep. No, my boyfriend's in there. He's going to kill me. They were like, go to bed and go to sleep. Go inside, drink a glass of water, and fucking go to sleep. Thank God, because I was like, I better put my trainers on. I better wear something comfortable. This is going to be a 24
You're going away for the night.
Yeah. For the night. And it'll probably be fine, because it's Ibiza. It's like, they can't, unless she's like gashed fucking lip out. Mm-hmm. She had nothing. There's nothing on her, and she's obviously high and drunk. But normally, and so it's different in different cultures and different countries. I've heard you talk about it on trigonometry. The police are obliged and even incentivized, because they have to hit a certain score for arrests. I can't remember the technical language used for it, but there's a score for arrests. Quotas. So yeah, they probably will arrest the guy, and then tick, there's one more arrest, there's one more lad banged up. Doesn't work like that in other countries. But yes, I accept that, like, the norm is the man is going to be assumed to be in the wrong. And I was told afterwards by the guy who lived in the flat upstairs, he said the law here is they actually should have arrested you, even for the suggestion of domestic violence. Even they should have just the law, or the standard operational procedure, is arrest first, and then by the light of day, then sort it out afterwards, sort out the truth afterwards. Yeah. He said you're very lucky, very, very lucky.
But yes, fair play.
Accept it. Yeah, I accept it happens.
It's awful that it's awful that happened to you. It's awful that it's happened to me. And the amount of messages I get since I've actually started talking about this a bit more openly, the amount of messages I get of guys, like one lad in particular, Bobby, built like a brick shithouse. And he said he was being abused by his ex-missus, who's for about 6 months he was in a relationship. And, he said the girl was about 5'2", 3 stone wet through. And he said it was like if she hit him, dare he hit her back? And 2, if it was also the manipulation side of it. And he did leave, and then there was malicious allegations made against him as well. And I remember hearing, in a domestic abusive relationship, the woman is generally more scared of her safety. The man's more scared of, like, reputational damage, because there's nothing worse than to be accused of, being a domestic abuser. Yeah. Just just with what we were talking about before, Richard, about the online narcissism space. I don't know if you've seen this, but certainly whenever I've spoke about it, people do not seem to respect boundaries. I mean, God only knows what your inbox is like, your DMs are like. But I would have people messaging me the most intricate details of their abuse, voice notes, emails. People have sent me videos of them having arguments with people. Why do you think that is? Why do you think people, from what I've seen, is people spend so long in this cycle of I have to know the truth. I have to know whether they were borderline or whether they were narcissistic. And only when I get the answer can I finally move on. And this can go on for years. Like there's people create pages which are completely dedicated to my own healing journey and my own journey. And it's like you have to, in my opinion, you have to get to the point where you go, even if they were or were not this particular label, it's still not okay what happened to you. You have to get to the point where you go, enough is enough. I now need to move on with my life. Do you see that? Do you experience that? Or what advice would you give to people who are in that cycle of looking for answers?
The advice for the people who are receiving gut spill emails, or advice for the people who are doing the gut spilling?
Both.
So gut spill emails.
Have you had that?
Fucking mate, 13 fucking years of it. Just every day, like whatever email I set up, I can set up an email that'll be like technical issues at richardgrannon.com, and it will just be filled up with gut spill, really graphic descriptions of violence and abuse in their childhood, and or women with erotomaniac delusions that were in a relationship together because she talks to me when I'm on YouTube. So she'll be like, last night, babe, when you said this to me, you sounded like my uncle. And then we went to the gym together. And it's a woman who lives in, I don't know, fucking Idaho in America. And I'm like, I've never been. Yeah. My inbox is.
So they imagine that you are in some kind of relationship with you based off seeing you online.
Yes. This has happened now with 20 women, and 7 of them, it's now past the 5-year mark. One of them writes me over 80 emails a day, every single day for the last, she's done it since 2018.
That's harassment. That's.
Yeah, I keep everything.
Yeah.
This one woman, she came up to a seminar and she started, so she was being normal when people were around. And then when it was just, she followed me to the toilets and she was like, are we going to talk about me and you? Are we going to talk about us? And I was like, what? I need to piss. What do you want? Like, why are you following me to the toilets? We need to talk about me and you. And I'm like, I don't know you. There is no me and you. And in the end, I had to threaten to call the police on her. She was small. She was a small woman, but I'm like, she could be carrying a knife. She could have acid on her. She could have acid on her. I don't fucking know. It happened in America. A woman with her eyes were too wide, and she comes up to me at the end of a seminar in San Diego, reaches into her bag and goes, I have something to show you. I put my hand on her wrist and on her arm, and I said, that's great. And I really want to see what this lady is going to show me, but I think we're going to do it out here in front of a bunch of witnesses. I'm like, I'm not dying here. I'm not. And what it was, she had a book. She'd come off Adderall cold turkey after years of usage, and it induces psychosis. And she said, in this book, it wasn't a Glock, it was just a book. But I wanted, if I'm going to die, I'm dying in front of.
You don't want to take the fucking chance, do you?
Nah. And so she goes, in this book, it teaches you how you and me, Richard, can stop time and reverse time by having sex in this. What do they call it? We call it a jacuzzi. The Americans call it a hot tub. There's a magical hot tub that we had to go and have sex in order to reverse time. And I was like, wow, that's really, yeah. So I have to go now.
Fucking hell, man.
Yeah. So there's very, very mentally disturbed people out there who's psychotic, and they will latch on to people who they see as like public figures. It's called erotomania, and then they just project all of this stuff For the people who are really, really struggling for their sense of reality, and they feel like they need to gut spill the trauma because they think you're going to read it, analyze it, and say, okay, this is what's really happening to you. They have to go to therapy. They have to pay for a therapist and speak to them.
I remember when I got a few messages, and I remember saying to my girlfriend, I said, like, this person just random. And it was men and women. It wasn't just women. Get messages of people, and I remember saying to her, like, do I respond? What do I do? And she said, you won't be the only person they've messaged that. You won't be the only person they spill their guts out to. And you can't, they know what they need to do. They need to do the proper work. You can't fix them. And you have to draw that line. And I mean, my advice to people who are going through stuff like that, like, okay, it's being in a bad relationship is absolutely awful. It can ruin your life, but there has to be a point where you turn around and go, right, that's done now. I need to stop doing deep dives into YouTube. Need to stop following all these different pages. And work on yourself, and like, just going back to what the start said at the start, Richard, is brutal honesty with yourself. And I think one thing I see is when people get into these relationships, they characterize themselves and say, well, I'm an empath, and because I'm an empath, I'm completely hopeless and helpless against these personality types. Essentially, what you're doing is you're prescribing yourself as a victim, and that you are powerless against these. It's almost like a demological model. It's like the narcissist is the devil and the demon, and you are the perfect supply, and there's nothing you could ever possibly do to prevent that. I think that's an incredibly damaging way to view yourself, because I was in a bad relationship. I know the things what I did wrong. I know that there were points where I should have walked away, but for whatever reason I didn't. I have to own that, both the good and the bad. These people have to be brutally honest with themselves and say, I'm not just some helpless little lamb. I was an active part in that relationship. There were points I should have walked away, points I should have left. It's now done. I have to now move on with my life. But people, like we said before, people don't like hearing that locus of control, that self-accountability for good, bad, and the ugly. You did it when you said that you were in your 30s and you were going through lots of, not very good behaviors. I've certainly done it, and we're better people for it. That brutal honesty in every capacity has to come from you, and you have to be able to look inwards and go, what the fuck have I done wrong here? How can I prevent myself getting into this position again? Because it's one thing understanding the relationship you was in, but it's actually quite pointless if you find yourself in there again because you haven't done the work which was required, which led you to get into that point as well. I think do you refer to it as shadow work, or is that's Jung, isn't it? Shadow work.
Yeah, Jung is shadow work, but I'm going to stop doing that because it brings people out of the woodwork like the term BPD does. So you get people who've never read Jung in their lives. I don't think they've read a book in their lives. I don't think they've read a single essay by Jung, and then they want to lecture me about what shadow work is and isn't. And I'm like, I know that I know more about. I'm not a Jungian, but I know that I know more about the subject than you. The language you're using is incorrect. For instance, most of them don't even know. Jung never said shadow work. That's in the Jungian tradition. Jung never advocated something called shadow work. I'm going to stop using it because it's too confusing. So I'm using it in the technical sense, the purest psychoanalytic sense, which is the shadow is the parts of us that we have disavowed that still continues to influence our lives and our decisions. I will go back to using Freudian language like introject because I think it creates less confusion. But speaking of Freud and Jung, there is a third person in the Holy Trinity that nobody talks about, who's Alfred Adler. And I think you'd like him. And
I have heard you mention Adler before.
Yeah. So that therapeutic model would ask a question, which would be, what do you, the client, what do you gain by believing that the narcissist was all powerful and you were a helpless victim? And what would you lose if you changed that story such that they were just a con artist and you also were a little bit in on the con because you wanted to be conned? What would you lose? That's where Adler would go. There's a reason why Adler is forgotten. Jung lets people dream. Jung lets people fantasize. It's mystery. Oh, it's symbols. Very little of Jung was about mystery and symbols, to be honest. He was a very high IQ guy and he was pretty pragmatic. They prefer Freud because it's the medical model. It's, I just have depression, nothing I can do about it. It's like having fucking, I don't know, typhus or syphilis or the coronavirus. And so Adler gets abandoned because Adler asks us the hard questions to ask ourselves, which is, what do you gain by your sickness? What do you gain from your trauma, from your pain? And what do you not want to let go of? And where are you not being courageous enough? And we never hear about him, but that's probably a little bit more of what people need is more Adler, less Jung, less Freud.
I think that sounds like a really good, a very good method for introspection there, is ask yourself those difficult questions. So, Richard, I've taken up loads of your time. I just want to ask you one more question and then we can finish. But you mentioned something in your book in relation to, well, I'm just going to ask you the question. So you said you've done LSD in the past. I've done, never done LSD, I've done magic mushrooms. I found when I did them just like a little bit recreationally, yeah, okay, colours popping out, I feel that good. When I actually went on a proper psychedelic trip, I found that there was a lot of things what came up which I'd perhaps forgotten about, things which I needed to address from childhood. Can you see, or would you like to see, or not like to see, a future where controlled psychedelic experiences are used in therapeutic settings?
I think we can see from the emerging clinical literature that ketamine and MDMA is more predictable with the results, and ketamine-based, MDMA-based therapy, especially for PTSD, seems to be doing great. Psychedelics is a bit of a double-edged sword. As much as it opens the mind, I think it can fracture the mind. So, especially for people with PTSD, it's very risky. And I've always said to people, like, be very, very careful. I love Terence McKenna. I love Tim Leary. I loved Robert Anton Wilson. But they were not careful when advocating for the use of psychedelics of people who have varying degrees of psychosis. I was going to say this to you before. You'll see a cohort of people who say, you and I will do a seminar on overcoming narcissistic abuse. And 100 people show up. 5 or 6 of them are psychotics, what we used to call schizophrenics. They have psychotic spectrum disorder. Yeah, they might have been in a narcissistically abusive relationship, but their problems are way upstream of that, much, much further upstream of that. And we have to account for the fact that some people can't tolerate any dose of psychedelics. I've discussed this. He's a professor at the University of Central London, and I can't remember his name. It doesn't matter. He says when psychedelics are truly safe, they're at such low doses that they're barely having any perception. They're barely having any impact on your perception at all. He also said when people talk about microdosing, he said a true microdose doesn't do really anything at all to you. So when people are microdosing, they're actually getting high. They're just getting high in a small
with a little
small
bit
way, with a little bit. Yeah, but I don't think any drugs should be illegal. I would go the Portugal route. I would decriminalize all drugs. In my dictatorship, it would be decriminalized. I would just say to people like, well, you can drink yourself to death in our culture if you want to. You can drug yourself to death if you want to, but don't whinge and don't be a burden on the National Health Service if you're ruining your life with drugs and alcohol. So yeah, I'd be open to see it being something people could take, but therapeutically, maybe. I mean, according to this professor I spoke to, they're coming up with new formats of psychedelics all the time. I thought there was 3. He said no, there's more like 300 of different forms. Oh yeah, there's and more emerging all the time. Maybe they'll find one that's by dosage or by temperament is really good for that kind of, in a perfect storm, you take the right amount of magic mushrooms, the right amount of DMT or acid in the right environment, or ayahuasca, to just be able to introspect, to develop. And the psychedelic revelations are always the same. We're all one consciousness. We're all part of the same reality. We should be kind. We should be empathic. It's usually a movement away from fractionation and alienation and towards unity and cohesion. If there was a drug that automatically gave people that empathy and coherence consciousness, I would say yes, we should give it to everybody.
Really, it's called 4 pints. Suddenly you love everyone. It's just with that, I mean, psychedelics are incredibly powerful, very, very powerful, and you can have a bad time on them. So if anyone hears this, like, I'm not advocating you go out and take a load of magic mushrooms. What I'm saying is, if you were to do something like that, just know it can go fucking horribly wrong. Or you could have even a good experience when I did them. Therapy, I use the analogy of therapy, it's like peeling back the layers. Psychedelics will be like a spearhead getting right to the center of it. Some people ain't ready for that. And I was, thankfully, I'd like to think quite strong-minded, so I'm going to keep myself grounded. Not everyone can. And that's because I do a lot of meditation and I explore things. Like, we've done a lot of inner work myself. But Richard, where can people find you and what is next for you? What's in the pipeline for you next?
I'm probably going to spend time in 2026 focusing on my philosophy channel, and I have a channel that is just for men who are recovering from narcissistic and emotional abuse at the hands of women. That will be my main focus in 2026. If they want to find me, just put Richard Grannon into Instagram or YouTube, and I'm all over the place.
Amazing. Well, Richard, thank you so. I've really enjoyed our chat today. Thank you so much, everybody. I don't care if you enjoyed it. This was purely for me. Everybody, go follow Richard and subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to Richard as well.
Thank you for having me.